Hello, I am here with Jeremy Smith of Civitech, which provides services for progressive candidates, nonprofits, and organizations. Um, how are you today, Jeremy?
Hey, Azim, I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Doing well. Um, so we'll get right into it. Do you think that COVID-19 will affect the November 2020 election?
Unfortunately, yes, I think COVID is definitely likely to affect the outcome of the election.
And in what ways?
I think that we're likely to see that it causes people to be both concerned and then confused by the changes that are being made in rapid order to systems of elections that they have not seen in their state before or that they may not be familiar with. So the rapid adoption of new laws, new procedures, executive orders, and the impacts, like we saw in Wisconsin when 175, I think, out of 180 polling places didn't open because the workers didn't show up because they were concerned for their health. So I think we're likely to see bureaucratic impacts and then health impacts and confusion and most importantly just concern and for safety and security and really just about like where to go and when the logistics for individual voters.
Do you think that it will or has affected voter registration?
It definitely it has substantially impacted voter registration already. We can measure the rates of voter registration month to month in every state, and if you compare 2020 to 2018, 2016, 2014, 2012, as far back as you want to go, voter registration right now in every state in America is way down. In some places, it is at levels of 1 to 5% of past rates for an election year. And in some places it's 25% or 40%. It has been getting slightly better recently, and there are lots of efforts underway to try to help people. But voter registration across the country has been substantially impacted already, and especially because people have had to move. They've lost their jobs or they've had to return home to care for someone who is ill. We have more people obviously dying than off of so there are fewer voters now in an extreme way. So it is having a massive dampening effect, and most of the biggest voter registration methods are people going to the DMV, people going to concerts and getting signed up by volunteers, tables at college campuses. So a lot of those types of in-person mass kind of signups are just not possible now.
Do you think that will tangibly impact turnout? I mean, obviously this is an atypical election, so maybe it can offset that, but what effect do you think it'll have on voter turnout come November?
Yeah, it seemed like before COVID, we were on track for historic high turnout across the country. And I think there was a lot of concern that COVID would substantially reduce that turnout. Many of the primaries have remained have had high turnout, and some of the runoffs, some of the special elections as well. So it does seem counterintuitive right now that turnout in some of the primaries is higher, but that may also be a change in the political nature of the primary. For example, the Democrats had a lot more candidates this time around than they did in 2016. And so there's sometimes more enthusiasm because people have more options. So it is I think still an open question. It seems undoubtedly true that more people are worried about voting. They're saying aloud that they are concerned and may not vote in a way that they don't otherwise. So my expectation is that we will see reduced turnout from whatever that high watermark was going to be. So it might still be high, but I think it is relatively lower than what it would have been this year otherwise. And to your point, there are a number of social factors going on that are pushing higher turnout.
I guess specifically, what do you think that means for a state like Texas, which people have theorized could go purple this year? But do you think that is not a possibility anymore?
I definitely think it's always a possibility. I think Texas is one of those states where it's, the color that CNN draws it on the map, where it looks like a very large red mark, doesn't necessarily match the reality on the ground. If you look at Beto O'Rourke versus Ted Cruz in 2018, Beto O'Rourke got about 4 million votes. I think Ted Cruz got about 4.2 million votes. And so people said, Ted Cruz won 52-48, but there were 15.5 million people on the voter registration rolls, and only 8 million of them are voting.
Mm-hmm.
And there were another 6 to 7 million unregistered people in Texas who could have registered and voted. So really, Ted Cruz won with 18% of the vote to Beto's 17% of the vote. So I think Texas is one of those cases because it's such a large population and it has such a large non-voting sub-demographic, especially people who are from Latinx communities along the border, and a lot of the inner city districts that people would say are strongly Democratic districts have some of the lowest turnout for urban areas around the country. Several Houston districts, I think, have 600,000 voters with only 70,000 people showing up. So it's not an easy answer there. I think Texas could flip at any moment to anybody. There's enough room for a third party to double the vote of everybody else combined. So I think Texas is still always in play in a way that belies like normal politics, but no one appears to have like cracked that DNA. I do think that the election might change if only people who are over 65, because Texas only allows people over 65 to vote by mail. So, and those who are disabled. And so, as a result of that, we are likely to see a skew in the age demographics in the election that wouldn't have happened otherwise, which would tend to suggest more relative Republican votes than Democratic votes. But I think it's an open question.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. And I guess final question: what would your organization propose as a remedy to the ongoing crisis and to sustain high voter turnout and registration?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is for state, local, and national governments to recognize the role they need to play in the emergency and help put a stop to the spread of the disease rapidly. It's something that other countries have been able to do in under 3 to 4 weeks by enforcing kind of national stay at home and safety measures and surging capacity in contact tracing and everything else to kind of slow this down and put a stop to it. And there's still plenty of time to fix it, which would restore a great amount of confidence in governmental action and security and the ability for like leaders to actually do something that is effective and useful to the people who most need it. So I think there's still plenty of time, and that would be the single most important thing that can be done. But I think we've seen pretty clearly that this is a challenge that has surpassed our capacity at this juncture. So other things that they could do are to rapidly implement expansions in vote by mail access and eligibility. We could see online voter registration. That would be the Texas legislature could call a special session and pass it tomorrow. It would save them a tremendous amount of money that they are spending on postage right now and paper forms that they're trying to distribute to various places. And they could use the internet in the next few weeks to help every Texan get registered to vote. And it would give them greater accuracy on the voter file and prevent all of the fraud that many people claim to be concerned about. If you can actually accurately gauge information that is typed in rather than handwritten from a voter, it gives you a more accurate list that you can check against the DMV and other government files. So I think that there's increasing the access from voter registration, increasing access to vote by mail, and putting some money into staffing up the elections with younger people than normal. Normally, I think election officials are often in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They're often retired. And those are the same people who are most at risk right now for getting infected in a very serious way. So I would say recruiting and supporting younger people in staffing up polls, and all those three things would be simple to do at any locality, and any county or city or state government could easily put that money in an effort to make sure that elections are like fair, safe, and secure.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I hope you have a nice day.